Welcome. This is the regular city council meeting for the city of St. Peter. It is Monday, April 26, 2021. It is 7 o'clock p.m. This meeting is being held in person and virtually. We will call the meeting to order, and would all please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. First thing we have tonight is the agenda, and there are some changes to the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, if I can request a modification to the agenda, we're looking to, under new business, remove item number A under new business and move that to near the end of the meeting. And then also asking for another executive session relative to that same topic, ends property easements. So it's our anticipation that after that closed session, we would come back in, depending on what the council's discussion is during that closed session.
Everyone understand that change? If there is discussion, we will come in after when we return to open session and adjournment. With those changes, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Ed will make a motion to approve the agenda with them changes that Todd talked about.
Carrie Johnson will second.
Ed 1, Carrie 2. Any questions about the agenda? All in favor of the agenda with those changes, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Amended agenda or modified agenda is approved. Next up, we have the minutes from our April 12th, 2020 regular meeting, and those minutes appear on pages 7, and I didn't write it down, should have, 7 through 12. Are there any questions, changes about those minutes?
Emily has her hand up.
Oh, did she? Oh, there she is. Emily.
Yeah, on page 10, the beekeeping permit fee, council members Johnson, Kay, and Bruflat voting, and it should be nay.
Okay. You see that one, Barb?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. With that one change, is there any other changes or corrections? With that one change on page 10, is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Steve Graham.
Emily will second.
Steve 1, Emily 2. All those in favor of the minutes with the one change, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Next, we have the minutes from our April 19th, 2021 special meeting. Those minutes appear on page 13. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
Ed will make a motion to approve.
Noel will second.
Ed 1, Shannon 2. Any questions now? All in favor of the minutes for our special meeting, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Next up tonight, we have probably the biggest issue we have to talk about here tonight. We have a visitor, and that visitor is Chief Matt Peters, and he is here because of his retirement. And Chief, I don't know if you want to say a few words first, or a lot of words first, or you just want to give us a gift, or us to give you a gift and be on your merry way. If you want to come up and just say a few words first before we get into that, that would be great. Yep. You have to push it down, but otherwise it does.
I don't have a speech, Mayor, but I do want to thank all the city councils that I've worked with in the past, including this one, the mayors I've worked with. It's easy to be a good leader when you have a great team. And so everyone I've worked with has just made it so much fun and easy to do the job. Truly has. And I'll miss it. I'll miss the people especially. And it sounds kind of cliche-ish, but that's why I'm in the business, is to work with people.
Right.
So
Right.
thank you very much.
Yeah. You and I have talked, and, I told you, I've lived here for 45 years, and I've gone through, as far as I know, with the dates, 2 chiefs of police, which kind of says a lot over 45 years. And I cannot recall a day or a night where I have not felt, or when I have not felt unsafe. I mean, I feel safe every day and every night in this town. And I think that's a reflection upon yourself and your officers, and I really think it warrants many accolades from our citizens from over the years on the work you guys have done, and I do appreciate that. A concern I have, I hope we can keep recruiting very, very good police officers. It's a trying time, and I hope their risk-reward analysis when it comes to being even being a police officer, I hope is favorable, and that we can continue on. So,
As I do. Thank you so much.
yeah. Next up, I'm going to come to you, because we have a little presentation to make. And see if you can guess what it is. It was in a box, but see if you can guess what it is.
Todd has an office full of those.
Oh, you pulled the wrong names on here. I'm going to set this right here for the time being, Chief. And I'm going to take this. Put it right here. We have a little certificate of appreciation. And it says, whereas Matthew Peters has faithfully served his community and the city of St. Peter as Chief of Police since October 5th, 1998. And whereas his performance of the duties and responsibilities of Chief of Police have been characterized by constructive contributions and dedication to the city and its citizens. And whereas he has been a steadfast leader and innovator during what has been some tumultuous times for law enforcement across the nation. And whereas throughout his career with the city, Matt has earned the respect and admiration of his fellow law enforcement officers for his expertise and commitment to upholding the high standards of their profession. And whereas Chief Peters has announced his intent to retire from active duty as of May 3rd, 2021. Now, therefore, I, Charles Zeman, Mayor of the City of St. Peter, Nicollet County, Minnesota, do hereby present this certificate of appreciation to Matthew Peters, and do hereby extend to him the City Council's deep appreciation for his many years of service and best wishes for an enjoyable and relaxing retirement in witness thereof. Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I've got a box for that, so.
Thanks, Matt, for all the good stuff you've done.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. At least it,
We want to for you.
Make sure it gets home safe.
There's like an engineer back there.
at least it wasn't the wall clock,
That's a John Quappy guy. It was, that's what he wanted. All right. Thanks, Matt. You can stick around if you want. Yeah, you know. We were addressing visitors. Are there any other visitors that would like to speak to the council on any agenda item? And I
Mr.
think we have Mr. Westry.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we do.
Is there anyone else? There's no one present, I don't believe, but is there anyone else that's tuning in that would like to speak to the council on any agenda item?
If so, we'd ask you to turn on your microphone now so that we can make sure that it's working, and then we can recognize you as we move forward.
Okay. Mr. Westry, we will put you down for the B discussion, I guess, by the emails that we received. Okay, seeing no one else, is there anyone that would like to speak to the council on any matter whatsoever? Seeing or hearing no one, we will move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins in detail on page 14 and concludes with the resolution on pages 32 and 33, and includes the following budgeted purchases in excess of $10,000 to cover works for a shelter kit for Minnesota Square for $21,085, to Irby Amorphous for one 2,000 kVA three-phase pad-mounted transformer for $48,505, to Border States for one 225 kVA three-phase pad-mounted transformer for $11,766.93. We have a temporary employee appointment to Logan Olson for lineman assistant for $14 per hour. We have a couple of gambling licenses to the St. Peter Ambassadors and to Gustavus. And then we have a list of, I didn't add up how many, but a list of tree worker licenses, which are all renewals. So with that, plus the schedule of disbursements for April 8th, 2021 through April 21st, 2021. Are there any questions or comments concerning the consent agenda? Is Pete here tonight?
Yep.
Oh, didn't see him. Oh, there he is. Okay. Pete, I have a couple questions on the transformers. In the memos, in the memo on page 15 and on the one on page 16, we designate that these transformers are to provide power for a specific purpose. First one to Gustavus, the second one to McDonald's. Are these being used for other purposes, or is it just to suit their requirements?
No, both Gustavus and McDonald's are going through a rebuild process, and these are specific transformers for their purpose.
Are they buying these, or is the city buying these?
The city buys those.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, because I've never seen quite the designation for them on memos, and I think that's great. I just never seen that before. All right. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda? All right. Is there a motion to approve?
Carrie Johnson will make a motion to approve.
Noel will second.
Carrie 1, Shannon 2. Any other questions now?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just so I can clarify, the transformer for Gustavus will pay a portion of that transformer cost based on they're doing some rewiring of their distribution system. So there'll be probably $10,000, $12,000 that will be billed back to Gustavus for that purpose.
Okay. All right.
Just to clarify.
All right. Any other questions? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Next, we have unfinished business, and the first thing up, we have Sally here tonight to discuss the Stormwater Fund 2021-2022 budgets. Sally.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members, I know that we had an error on a spreadsheet that's caused this to kind of go around a little bit, but the information that you see within your packet starting on page 34 and the spreadsheets that are attached relate to the budget. You had indicated to us at the last time that you talked that you would look forward to taking action on the budget, but wanted to have an additional discussion on the rates. And so the plan would be to bring that back to you, the rate portion of this, at your next workshop. Again, our goal for the discussion tonight, and Sally and Pete are here, is to make sure that we cover enough information to make you feel comfortable about your previous discussions and any changes that might have occurred related to the overall budget from an expenditure standpoint. This gives us a plan to work forward. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, I turn it over to Sally.
Okay.
Okay. Mayor Zeman and council members, Again, we are here tonight. I'm sorry, first of all, I'll say for the error in the spreadsheet and hidden columns. I'm sorry for those errors. It did not change the actual expenditures, but it did change the reserve calculation at the bottom of the spreadsheet. So those have been corrected, as Todd has said. So as we've discussed before, the stormwater services include stormwater management, the planning, reviewing, and inspection of construction of the city right-of-ways, and public improvements, i.e. out in Traverse Green and other developments that come out, locating city-owned utilities in the right-of-way, and repair and maintenance of our stormwater infrastructure within our community. Wages and other costs of operation are seeing typical increases both in 21 and 22. You approved the wage increases for the union in January, I believe, for this one, for stormwater. And then, you know, just the same medical that we've seen across the board. And then next year, it's just right now budgeted at about a 2.5% increase for wages. As we've done in the other enterprise funds, we are working on a 2-year budget cycle. So we're looking at 21 and 22. Stormwater continues to contribute 6.5% of gross sales to the general fund budget for both 21 and 22. On page 43, you'll see a list of our capital projects. For 2021, we're looking at $242,000, and these are being funded with cash for 2021. And those include, as listed, design and rebuild of the North 3rd Street, Livermore to Union Street, to enhance the storm structures there for about $66,000. And we continue to build 1 or 2 intersections like that every year. So streets need to be repaired. We're committed to repairing them and keep the work going. This will finish 3rd Street, and then with your North 3rd that we're also working on, 3rd Street will be complete. So we'll be looking at other areas in town that need to be worked on, and Pete's team will come and identify what 2 blocks that is each year going forward. We have engineering to support those projects of $20,500. Public Works improvements out at Public Works for $5,500. Community Spirit Parks improvements, that's a $10,000 expenditure, and as you see, that was budgeted for 2020. The work was not completed with COVID and some other things, so we've pushed that. So we are putting some of these as placeholders out there, and if we can't get to them, they'll either push into the next year, or if the equipment doesn't wear out, we'll wait and spend it in future years when needed. The land purchase on Old Minnesota Avenue was moved from 20 to 21 for $25,000. Building and structure improvements in the collector and lift stations, $12,000. A replace of a mower for $45,000. Replace of a pump for $40,000. Again, that was supposed to be done in 2020. It didn't. It survived 2020, so we're thinking it's going to need to be replaced in 2021. There's a John Deere mower that's split 50-50 between this and the wastewater. We also have a John Deere mower that moved from 2021, and that's split between 3. It's a $12,000 mower. Got another year out of that. And a rotary mower for $6,000. Again, these will come to you. Just because you approve the budget doesn't give us free rein to go and spend the money. They will come into either on the consent agenda, or if they're bigger than that, as an individual item for approval. Okay. This fund was debt-free as of 2020. The last payment was made on the debt that was issued for $870,000. And then based on the projected budget, the cash position will decrease from $1,076,566 at the end of 2020 down to $816,655 at the end of 2021, a almost $260,000 decrease in our cash position, and an estimated $528,844 at the end of 22, with a decrease of an additional cash decrease of $287,811. The budget includes using the issuance of debt for the Brown Street Basin in 2022 as a placeholder, and that's right now $450,000 is what's in the budget for that, and we will issue debt. It'll all depend on where the development goes. If the development doesn't take off down on the north end of town, we'll push it another year or 2. So we'll come back as development happens down there. As we said, it anticipates using $242,000 of cash to fund capital in both years, and $262,000 in 2022. Our goal is to have operating income for all of our enterprise funds. As you can see on page 40 of the packet, currently the stormwater fund is at an operating loss of $17,911 for 2021, and an additional $28,612 for 2022. Short term, we can sustain that as you see our cash, but long term, that is not where we want to go. So we are, as we said, we'll discuss rates at a future workshop and meeting, but right now, losses for extended period of time is not sustainable. On page 43, there is a 10-year capital plan, and our capital projections are anywhere from $137,800 to $677,400. Challenges we face are living on a river. We have a lot of state and federal regulations that come down that we have to fund, and we have to support the water, wastewater, and stormwater runoff. So we have to deal with that. So we are asking you to approve a resolution on page 44 for the stormwater budget for 2021, including capital of $1,190,822, and for the year 22, $1,424,723.
All right. Questions for Sally? We've been over this a few times, I guess. And Brad?
Sorry. So I have questions regarding particularly the 169 Drantle Basin in 2023. Actually, we'll back up. The Brown Street Basin, on the financing, it had assess/developer bonds. My first question is there going to be any assessment on that, or is that just going to be all city payment? And is just sort of a headline or title that it's under?
If I can, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I anticipate right now that we will work to provide some level of assessment, and that'll be an issue that will be determined later by the council. How much that will be will depend on valuations and project and the amount of square footage or acreage that properties in that area will attribute to that pond or contribute to that pond. And so it's likely that there will be some level of assessment. Frankly, as we've discussed at previous meetings, I anticipate that to be much less than we had originally talked about when assessment and assessment policy was established as we looked forward related to stormwater. So I hope that answers your question.
Yep. Yeah, that was what I was wondering. And then do you know about how much, like with the 169 Drantle Basin, about how much lead time are we going to have on when I know that's, as I understand, that's sort of development driven too. Is that going to be a couple years lead time before we know we have to deal with that? Or are you really looking and saying that we're pretty sure in 2023 development is going to drive that?
I wouldn't, Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Yes.
I wouldn't say that I'm pretty sure that that will happen. I wish I could tell you, in my ideal world, we'd have a couple of years of lead time. But I don't know that that's realistic and that would hold up development in that area. I think, Mayor and members, as we may have previously discussed, this is development driven, particularly in the area that is north of Highway 22 or Dodd Road, and then west of 3rd Street in that area. So west of the new area where Anytime Fitness is, as an example. And so that will drive it. I also think that DOT contributes a little bit to that. So anything that they might change within that area, which we don't anticipate anything right now, could be a factor for that. If we don't do it within 2023, we won't look to spend those dollars. And so I think that's a capital purchase question. But we wanted to make sure that at least we had it on the books for you to know that there's the potential for that to occur. Without that stormwater basin, development, again, north of Dodd and west of 3rd Street would be hindered. It really needs that development because the ditch along Highway 169.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was just from a timing issue. So.
Okay.
So I've got. So I've got 2 amendments to propose. Main reason why is because when we come back and visit what we need to do for storm rates, what we do choosing from a budget here determines, whether our rate, so our rates are right here. What we do to determine tonight will tell us, do our rates need to be up here, or can they be about here? How high do we need to raise our rates? So I'm just going to put 2 amendments out there that will overall, from a projection standpoint, lower what we're paying out now, which should smooth out somewhat the rates we have. Main reason why I'm throwing it out there is because I don't want anyone to say, why didn't you propose this idea? You can decide what you want on your own, but I just feel this will help spread the cost out over time. I do understand that concerns were expressed over our bond rating. At the same time, bond rating is also a measure of your ability to pay off any debt you've taken on, which if we set the rates at the appropriate level, we'll definitely be able to cover any of that. So I am just going to, I have 2 amendments to propose. The first amendment regards equipment certificates. Amendment on the capital purchase side of things, from a budget perspective, because we are basing this budget on capital purchase guidelines as well. Any items that are obvious equipment things, so I'm not talking about, well, community spirit park restrooms or anything like that, but for example, this year, the lawnmower and Godwin pump number 1. In 2022, there is a projection for a pickup truck. 2023, there isn't anything, but then in 2024, we have the Mack Vector truck, which is split to I was an amendment that those items be slated for equipment certificates to smooth the payments out over 5 years, and lessening the need for a larger increase this year. So I'm not talking about being creative with the equipment certificates. I'm just talking about using equipment certificates for what they normally are used for. And so I'm just putting that out there. So as the mayor says, let's put it to a vote. So that is my motion.
Okay, since I didn't ask for a motion to approve the resolution, you're going to have to repeat that when we come to that point. So
okay, when
that happens.
Okay.
Okay. Any other?
Okay. Then I'll have a second one at that time. I'll have a second one.
Okay.
Which is at that time it will be to, for this year, shift the general fund payment from stormwater to wastewater. That would be $30,000 at the current rate, but if we raise rates, it will be higher. And I know when discussing with Todd, he indicated that it's hard to shift rates back, so that we put in place a plan over that consecutive years, each year starting in 2022, that will increase $5,000. This will, in the first 3 years, particularly when we approve a rate increase, save the stormwater $100,000. Once again, and wastewater won't notice it. Wastewater currently was finishing 2020 with $2 million in the bank. 2023, it's going to bottom out at about 2022, it's going to bottom out at 1.5 million, and then start going up 300,000 a year. So at this point, with this amount coming out, wastewater is not going to notice it, but with stormwater in the first 3 years, it's going to save the fund $100,000. Once again, it's how much do we need to raise rates? Do we need to raise rates up here, or can we bring rates to here? And so that's why that will be my second proposal, is that we do a shift, but then also set in place a timeline of annual increases to once again get stormwater back to where it is. And those are going to be my proposals, just so that, as I said, it's just a matter of how do we alleviate this increase by just using some standard options at our disposal.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Carrie.
I appreciate Brad's out-of-the-box thinking and your strong financial background and mind. I also just value, I think, this experience that our city staff have, too, with these intricacies and understanding benefits and risks and consequences. And so I guess I'm curious what city staff, if there's a reaction to those ideas, if it's appropriate to ask.
Sorry, I was just running my calculator here,
Okay.
trying to get that figured out. As Brad indicated, he and I did have a discussion about this. My belief is that, frankly, it took a lot to get to the point where this fund would help contribute to the general fund. And we can talk probably and may talk for hours about how it works and the relative balance related to taxable and non-taxable properties and how you want that to fit together. $30,000 is important, certainly, and a lot to us. However, related to all of these funds, it is not significant. It depends on how everything gets tied together. So certainly, from my perspective, the priority, the most volatile fund that you have is the general fund. And so removing revenue from that stream impacts your tax levy number, which is one of the numbers that, at least from my history here, councils have expressed, and residents to councils have expressed the most hesitancy to tinker with, so to speak. In relation to the equipment certificate, Brad and I did have that discussion. The things that he lists are eligible for equipment certificate. We have tried very diligently over the last number of years, based on previous council's comments, to avoid issuing debt in these funds relative to equipment certificates, but it certainly is viable and not irrational to do that type of thing. It does ratchet up your debt level. I can't tell you that it will have a significant impact on where you are relative to bond ratings or interest rates related to those bond ratings or not. That is more dependent on the time and what's going on in the world, frankly, than any changes that you might make here. So these are all relative changes. I appreciate the want to try and keep rates as low as possible and having a plan that steers us forward to be able to kind of get you back in the saddle, so to speak, relative to that general fund and what you want to do with debt. So those are some of the options that you have in front of you. Some of those changes, and again, I was trying to run my calculator very quickly, would impact the resolution on page 44. And so if those are amendments that the council wishes to move forward, I believe that the 2021 budget would be something like $1,160,822. I believe the 2022 budget would be something like $1,391,723. You'd have to give us a little bit of room. I hate to do this on the fly because budgets are important, and this is $1 million budget. And so I'd hate to do it on the fly. We'd prefer that you give us latitude to run the math a couple of times. And we could do that after you pass a resolution if you want to move forward. You just have to give us a little bit of latitude to do that. But I think those numbers that I provided are within the ballpark there.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Brad?
Just a clarification. My recommendation of contributions to the general fund, it holds the general fund harmless because the money would be made up by wastewater. So we are not actually shorting the general fund any money. It is a matter of just we have a global, we have a number of funds. So yeah, I am talking about leaving I am talking about not shorting the general fund. I just wanted to make sure we had that clarification in there. So
no, I understood your thoughts that way, Brad. Thank you.
Emily?
Okay.
Thank you. Brad, I am hearing you with your amendments, and the first one is intriguing to me, and I follow that one. Can you repeat or maybe succinctly say what your second amendment is and exactly what that would affect?
My second amendment would be in 2020 to, instead of contributing the 6.5% funds from stormwater out of the stormwater fund, it would be to utilize the wastewater fund to make up for that instead. And then beginning in 2022 and forward, at a clip of $5,000 per year, have stormwater start recouping so that we don't leave wastewater hanging out there, that we actually have stormwater, that we just put a plan in place that stormwater works its way back towards paying its funds and taking it off of wastewater.
Does that answer your question, Emily? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
Shanon's got her.
Oh, sorry, Shannon.
I wonder if we know, and I think we talked about this, but I didn't write it down from our last workshop, what the cost of the interest on those certificates would be, and whether or not, Brad, you factored that interest in when you were doing your figuring.
So the interest, I believe, we're currently running about 1 3/4% or so. Is that what we're currently running on it?
Yes.
Yes,
that's
sir,
what
that
the
was our last,
No.
again, it will depend on the marketplace at the time when you issue.
Yeah, so let's round up to 2%. Basically, what we would do is, for example, the $40,000 Godwin pump, at 2%, that would be about $800. That would be about $800 in interest in the first year. This is just rough numbers, and then the interest would go down each year. So basically, even so, you look at $40,000 spread out over 5 years. Instead of requiring $40,000 this year, you're looking at as I understand it, equipment certificates begin to be paid next year. Can you clarify that, Todd? Is that correct?
That would be correct. You have not issued yet, and it would depend a little bit on your issuance, but generally, yes, that would be correct. They would, in the year following, typically we provide equipment certificates, debt issuance for 5 years on a single issuance, and they rotate through on 5 years. You do have the ability to extend those out. The state statute provides the ability to do them for up to 10 years.
So basically, if you do a 5-year equipment certificate on a $40,000 pump, instead of $40,000 in the first year, you're looking at needing to raise $9,000 and a little under that $9,000 consecutively for the following years. At which point, then, as I said, it's not needing the lump sum now; it's needing a smaller lump sum over multiple years. And that's really what it comes down to is how much do we need now, or can we spread that cost out?
Okay. Shannon, that take care of your question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Anyone else? No one else? The resolution adopting the 2021-2022 Stormwater Fund budget appears on page 44. And before I ask for a motion to approve, Brad, I'm going to ask you to put your amendments in there. I don't think you need to go and explain every little detail in it, but just what you had referenced before. So if you want to...
Yes, I would like to move those amendments regarding stormwater fund being covered by wastewater funds to the general, or payments to the general fund, and then the equipment certificates as I outlined previously.
Okay. Is there a second? Not seeing a second, so the amendment to the resolution does not have support. So we will go back to the original resolution. On page 44, the resolution adopting the 2021-2022 Stormwater Fund budget is on that page. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed will make a motion to approve.
Carrie Johnson will second.
Ed 1, Carrie 2. Any other comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Nay, the capital expenses, I believe, should be spread out further.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Resolution passes with a vote of 6 to 1 nay. Next up, we have the city code modification for beekeeping regulations. And Todd, if you want to start us off, and then we'll go to Mr. Westry.
Mr. Mayor, members, the information in this starts on page 45 of your packet. You reviewed this on a number of different occasions. The significant changes that you have in this ordinance at this time are 3 from the time that you tabled it at your last council meeting. Mayor, members, if you want me to go through all of those, I certainly can, but let me for sure cover the last 3. The 3 changes that you made since the time that you tabled it are providing for a biennial inspection, and so that means once every 2 years. And so the fee resolution responds to that, and hopefully we've covered all the bases relative to doing that once every 2 years. That is similar in nature to what you do with dog licenses and cat licenses, as an example. And the third item then is a requirement for signage, and it outlines some of the rudimentary requirements for signage. And so that's included in section 8252. Mayor, members, if you do go forward with this, it's my anticipation that we would make this applicable starting June 1st. That would give staff just a little bit of time to develop the process, the forms, etc., relative to permit applications for this. You'll also see attached shortly after the ordinance is a resolution establishing the fee. You would ask that that fee be modified again for that biennial time frame. You discussed that being at $55 based on the recommendation from my office about what we think the cost to process that is, and frankly physically go out and view the property and provide for the inspection. Mr. Mayor, I'd stand for any other questions. I do know you have someone that wants to provide a presentation for you, and again, those public comments are provided for 5 minutes.
Okay. We will go to that first. Mr. Westry, I don't know, hopefully you heard all of that. I apologize for the last time you were here along with Mr. Rosso. I didn't designate 5 minutes, but both of you were well within your time. But that's the guideline that we've had since I've been around anyway. So if you want to state your name and your address, and go ahead and make your presentation.
Yeah. Peter Westry, 446 Nichols Court, St. Peter, Minnesota. We'll try to share my screen here. Hopefully it'll come up for.
If you can't, Peter, I don't know that I can solve it from this end, but we can see part of it there.
Okay, so I will.
So why don't you grab your top screen there? Why don't
we just put it down, because everybody's received it. I've got it up on my computer. I can just verbally run through the few points I had. About 4 slides will take about 3 minutes to go through. So, and it just was, we don't need to see the screen actually. So,
okay.
Oops. So, let me get myself cleared out here. Here we go. Basically, is it okay if I proceed? What happened here? Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, Mr. Westry. If you want to go forward, we can see part of your screen. If you don't care if we see the screen, you can certainly proceed.
I'll do the best I can. One of the things that I noticed was I dug into the issue about risks for anaphylaxis. Basically, it's so rare in the upper Midwest that you have to go back 10 years for it even to show on the Wonder database. You're roughly 470 times more likely to die from a firearm accident in any given year than you are to experience a bee sting injury. Second, we're bouncing around here. Native pollinators and honeybees can successfully coexist. Basically, the current ordinance does meet best practices. Basically, the spacing, if you look at social carrying capacity, we'd be looking probably fewer than 10 applications for licenses. At 2 colonies per beekeeper, we have maximum 20 hives and city limits, and that's well within the social carrying capacity. Basically, the size of St. Peter is 6.2 square miles. Using the data, the study I came with, any variance from 0.6 kilometers per hive to 1.6, the maximum number of hives you ever see would be 52, and we're not going to get there. Frankly, I can't imagine us getting there. The summary that I wanted to emphasize was that we can definitely live together This is definitely, the data definitely supports this. Some of the things that I dug into yesterday when I was today is that actually bees in cities do better than they do in the country. The overwinter survival rate, which is everything in beekeeping, is about 65%, and in the country it's about 40%. Bees also significantly outperform in honey production in the city. I thought some of it has to do with that we live in agricultural deserts. We should all be concerned about the lack of biological diversity that we have. Honeybees are no longer a non-endemic species. They were brought into North America with the first colonists in whatever 1520 or whenever the Mayflower came. There were beehives brought in at that time. We can say that if you take a brief YouTube survey, you'll find, and I did this today, and I came out of Detroit, New York, Paris, Portland, Oregon, Auckland, New Zealand, Boston. Each and every one of those cities has got beekeeping established and is doing quite well at it. There's actually strong arguments that it's improving the overall environment. In Detroit, because of population, there's actually urban agriculture emerging because of beekeeping, and it's a fascinating process. Unless you are a flower, bees aren't interested in you. They might bump into you, they'll go around you, and they're just on to their next little job. That's bees. One of the sources I did actually said that cities are going to need bees for the future. There's also suggestions that bees can help overall. We should be raising more food in our cities, and we're full of gardeners in St. Peter. We would be helping each other out dramatically if we had, by going forward with allowing some bees. Whenever possible, we should, excuse me. One of the things that I thought about today, it really is sad. Kids don't see bees anymore. The bees populations are declining, and that's concerning. Kids should know about bees. They should see them. And our kids aren't growing up to see bees. So there's something very sad about that. One of the things that I've noticed is that since I've been managing my yard more towards pollinators, I've been seeing bumblebees in my yard quite often. So bees are a measure of environmental health. That's just, if the bees are doing well, we're doing well as people. Again, we're supporting biodiversity, which does lead to healthier people overall. And let me see here. And I would, just to close, this conditions for all pollinators can be enriched by promoting suitable food plants from the regional species pool and offering missing habitat structures, native flowers, sandy ground, dead wood. Indeed, despite tidy lawn norms, many urban residents are ready to transform portions of shortcut lawns into pollinator-friendly diverse grasslands. If you were, and I've tried to manage my own yard that way, and there's a list of references that went through. I would gladly take a minute to take any, if in the event the ordinance passes, I would like to be able to speak to the permitting process. So.
Okay. Yeah, we got kind of a shaky start there, Mr. Westry, so if you do have anything, another minute to add, it's been about 6 minutes, but I'll give you another minute if you need anything to capsulize.
Basically I would say that if you look at the end of my presentation, you can see that we could self-certify, as beekeepers could self-certify. We could have one inspection and submit pictures and could clearly show that we're complying with the ordinance. This is my own backyard. Google Maps, you can see that there's natural flyaway barriers on all sides of my property line. People wouldn't even see my hives. If any place I choose to put in my backyard, they wouldn't be anywhere near it. If you drew a 100-foot circle around any potential spot, the only house that I may intersect would be Ken and Sel Makesner's directly up the hill on Peachy's Lane. Otherwise, I don't think I would hit any of the neighbors with any possible location for a hive set. And with the flyaway barriers, I clearly would not be impinging on the property rights of any of my neighbors.
Okay. Thank you again for being here. We appreciate that. Excuse me. Any
I'm glad to
other,
present.
any other questions or comments? Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For one last time to speak on this matter. First, all pollinators, including honeybees, they're already here in St. Peter, and we just can't legislate them away. We can't control where they go and don't go, and that's just a fact of nature. Second, then this has come up before, if one has the opinion that honeybees should only be kept in the country, but also believes that they are invasive and should not be a part of conservation efforts, I believe that these two views contradict, and I would argue you cannot have it both ways. So I'm asking other council members to consider that, and I think that some of the data that Mr. Westry just presented supports that. Third, I would not vote for something that I knew to be dangerous. If I had found solid evidence that this ordinance would put people in danger, I would not be in support of it. I agree again with Mr. Westry that the risk in this case is negligible, and I prefer to make my decisions based on facts and research. Fourth, we talked about this a lot, and it's gotten more philosophical and further away from just the values of St. Peter specifically. But I feel the need to point out that removing honeybees from our ecosystem in America would affect our food supply. There are many fruits and vegetables grown here in Minnesota that rely on honeybee pollination, including but not limited to strawberries, blueberries, squash, zucchini, broccoli, onions, melons, and the list goes on and on. Removing honeybees means these foods would be imported, resulting in a greater carbon footprint and a lower quality and more expensive product. Fifth, I will be supportive, kind of like we've talked about in the past, I'd be supportive of anything we can do to help the environment in the city, including banning certain chemicals or incentivizing citizens to plant pollinator gardens, or talking up the compost program that we have, educational opportunities about rethinking lawn care, etc. There's a lot we can do to show that we care about the environment, and I'd like to look at all of those things, including this ordinance. And then lastly, right before our meeting, I had a phone call from a citizen, and she was unable to jump into the meeting. She had a conflict, but she wanted me to share. Her name is Sheila Anderson. She's a St. Peter citizen, and she says her son is a 10th grader and has recently taken a beekeeping course and is keeping a couple of hives out at, I think it's called Grandma's Little Acreage, or one of those farm stands that's outside of St. Peter, and that he would absolutely be interested in keeping bees in town if an ordinance passed. And he wants to promote educational efforts around honeybees. So I thought that was really great to hear from another citizen, someone else who was interested in the actual keeping of bees. And just to close, I will say again that I believe in a both and approach and to supporting native bees and honeybees. I think it would be very sustainable and the best thing we can do for our pollinators. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else? Carrie?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of explain my position on this. I kind of discussed it at the workshop. But first of all, I just want to say I really appreciate the engagement from the community on this. And Peter, really thank you for your presentation and for all the thought and time that you put into that to help educate us. However, I have lost steam from my support and shifted my position on the ordinance change, primarily due to concern for the unintended consequences that impact the native bee population. I know that we could limit the number of permits to prevent that, but then that ultimately limits access to opportunity and creates inequities, which I'm all the time concerned about. Many of the constituents that wrote us really asked the council to direct our energy and time towards promoting pollinator-friendly practices as a city and or incentives like Mr. Mayor, Mayor Zeman suggested at the last workshop. So I think that's a great place to direct energy. And we spent a lot of time on this, but I also really valued the what I saw from council members and the reach that we all have in the community, which I think is really great. It feels like we're doing a good job of representing our constituents and also working across differences of opinion as well. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Steve?
What I've been listening to the news lately, and I've been, much as I hate to say, I've been listening to public comment on just try to stay away from Fox News, so I can't pull out. That's why I got my hair cut short, so I don't pull it out. But putting that aside, one thing that I've been hearing lately is the term, currently our country is in an I generation rather than a me generation. And when we were elected to this council as a body, we represent we represent the community. And from all of the many, many people that I have talked to, health environment of these in the community. And even a professional beekeeper had talked to me about against having honeybees in the community. And one person asked me, well, I don't want to live next to somebody that has a honeybee hive if my children knowingly or unknowingly have an allergy to the venom. What recourse do I have? And I said, well, based on the policy or the ordinances, you have none. And I thought, well, that just doesn't seem fair. So I've gone way around and around in all of this. So I guess I would be not supporting the bees either. I have really done a lot of research on this, more than anything else I think that we've done in our community.
Okay.
So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Shannon?
I'll keep my remarks really brief. I feel very similar to Carrie in that I really want to support our native pollinators. For me, this was sort of a 3-point test. With safety being 1, land use appropriateness being 2, and impact on native pollinators being 3. I absolutely, on number 1, think they are honeybees are safe to be in city limits. Where I really get hung up is the science behind what the impact on native pollinators. And there are people on both sides who are very educated and know a lot who disagree on this subject. And so at this point, I'm just not comfortable voting yes, because I am concerned, gravely concerned about our native pollinator. Hope that we will submit to being a pollinator-friendly community for the native pollinators primarily. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Not. The ordinance for modifying the city code to include bees appears on pages 47 through 50. Is there a motion for approval?
Emily so moves.
DeVos will second.
Emily 1, Brad 2. Any other questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Zeman.
Nay.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Hey,
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Nay.
Councilmember Noel. Nay. Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Nay.
Ordinance does not pass by a vote of 2 with 5 nays. Next up, we have kind of a moot point at this point, the beekeeping permit fee. Todd, do we need to proceed with this?
Mr. Mayor, respectfully, I would ask that this just be removed from the agenda. I don't know that the council necessarily has to take formal action to do that. We've operated in this way a little bit more casually than the strictest interpretation of Robert Rules of Order.
Right.
Certainly, if someone wants to move the resolution, they certainly can, but since you did not approve an ordinance change, there is no need for a fee.
Yeah. Well, there's no need. Let's do that. As long as the resolution is in front of us, I'm going to ask for if there is a motion to approve. Seeing none, the motion does not have support, or the resolution does not have support, so we will move on. Thank you, Todd. Next up, we have new business, and item A is being discontinued and moved, or being moved, I should say, down to the after the return to open session on the bottom of our agenda. So the first thing up we have tonight is an ADA ad hoc committee appointment. Todd.
Mr. Mayor and members, there's information included in your packet. Russ will provide the staff report on this item. Russ, if you would.
Yes, thank you, Todd. Mayor, members of the council, in the last year, you authorized the establishment of the Central Business District Accessibility Enhancement Loan/Grant Program. You had authorized funds from the revolving loan interest, and you received applications for about 1/3 of the available funding. You were able to successfully install 5 door opening systems in 3 businesses. A couple of them needed 2 because they had vestibules, so they had an outside door and an inside door. The recipients were very pleased with the program and the assistance provided and the access enhancement that's provided to their clients. And so you authorized the second round of this program last October, and we accepted applications through February. This year, we've received 8 applications by the time that the deadline came. And if all the funds were expended, it would be $67,633 or $34. Now you had attributed or provided $28,434 for this year's program. So the requests exceed the available fundings. Last year, you did not have to appoint an ad hoc committee to review the applications to select successful applicants. But this year, given that there will likely be those that are funded and those that are not, you're asked to appoint Ed Lee from the Chamber of Commerce and Jessica Becker from the Nicollet County Historical Society. They had both agreed to serve last year, and then there was no committee to serve on. And then I had discussed it with the president of the EDA, James Dunn, and he had recommended that Julie Fredrickson from the EDA represent the EDA. I would intend to assemble the committee perhaps a single time. I have preliminarily scored the applications based largely on traffic flow and on the public benefit to the improvement. And they would be asked to have a conversation either to affirm that or to provide some alternative recommendations. But I would expect that the matter would be back in front of the council for final approval of grant/loan applications later on this year. And I'd answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Questions for Russ? Carrie?
Russ, I don't have a question, just a comment, and I know we're here to talk about this committee, but I thought it was great to have received 8 applications this year. So thanks for whatever you had done differently or the same to spread the word and encourage folks to do that. I have a lot of faith in this committee. I know each of these individuals, and they are great. So would have a lot of trust in them to make good decisions. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, just as a point of clarification, this committee then would recommend to the council the approval of the grant/loan recipients.
Okay, right.
Up to
Thank
that
you.
$33,000.
The 28,000,
Whatever
give or
it was,
take.
I'm sorry.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
the
that's
28,000.
correct, sir.
Okay. Steve, just for your information, when I saw this, that we had all of these, the first person I thought of wasn't you, because I know you've been, big supporter for getting this done. But I asked Todd to contact John Kwame, because John, I think, was spent years and years and years trying to get people to react to this, and so hopefully it'll make them a little happier. Russ, I have a question for you. The balance of this fund that's needed, well, that's requested, would not our EDA, the city EDA, but the St. Peter EDA, or Development Corporation, sorry, I said EDA, but the St. Peter Development Corporation, do they have any interest, or do you know, does their guidelines would they support something like this?
Perhaps not necessarily, Mayor. I know that individual members have applications that have been submitted for buildings that they would own. If those that are not chosen to participate in 2021 will be given the opportunity to apply in 2022, assuming that the council would reauthorize the program, or they'd be able to access the 50% loan forgiveness that's in the other HPC improvement that we've used for handicap bathrooms and roof repairs. And a lot of these then could be done and then have 50% provided as a forgivable loan portion of that program.
Could they be able to then roll into the different this other program if it was more to their benefit?
In the next year, I would assume not, Mr. Mayor, since their project would have been funded with the 50% forgivability.
Okay, all right. Just trying to find a way if we can do this to try to get it done anyway. But appreciate all the efforts, and like I say, it's kind of been a long time coming. Any other questions or comments? Steve?
I just want to comment, this program wouldn't be viable if it weren't for the council that supports it, the current council and the prior council. Really have to thank the council members that are willing to do that, to put the city's money into this. And I also need to thank the EDA for their involvement, because they've supported it from the very beginning. So really, and also the businesses that are willing to take advantage of it. So it's a wonderful program. And, you have to really look at all the parties that are supportive of it. So I just want to thank the current council for their support.
All right. Anyone else? If not, the resolution establishing the ad hoc committee to review and recommend funding for the applications for 2021 Central Business District appears on page 58. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed will make a motion to approve.
Emily will,
I didn't hear the second.
Emily will second.
Okay. Ed 1, Emily 2. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb. Somebody's interfering. Barb?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye. Resolution is approved. Next up, we have Mr. Moulton for the next 2, 3, 4 items on our list, I believe, Pete. So we'll start out with the North 3rd Street improvements.
Mayor Zeman and City Council, the information that you see on pages 59 and 60 are related to the North 3rd Street improvement from Livermore to Union. Moulton and Ming developed a project scope for us. We went out and took bids. We did receive 4 bids, all real close or under the engineer's estimate for the project. This again would be a continuation of the street program projects that we've done the last few years. Our goal here would be to complete stormwater improvements in the area that have been identified. That includes upsizing the pipe from 10-inch to 24-inch to accommodate stormwater flows. We would be doing spot repairs on the sidewalk. We would also be completing curb and gutter replacement to improve the drainage. Our goal would be to mill off the existing asphalt, put the storm sewer in, put new base down, and restore the asphalt over a period of time. Our goal would be to authorize WW blacktopping from Mankato in the amount of $149,807.20, and there is a resolution on page 62, and I'm available for questions that you may have.
Todd, did you have something to add?
Mr. Mayor, members, if we could, should the council wish to move forward this resolution on page 62 and 63, you may have noticed, or like us, did not notice, but it's missing in a couple of locations. Has an example on the title. It's resolution awarding bid for 2021 North 3rd Street improvement. And so there's a couple times within the resolution that third should be inserted. So if that could be made as a part of the motion, that would be grateful. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, the resolution, and I'm going to make the change now. The resolution awarding the bid for the 2021 North 3rd Street improvement from Livermore to Union Street appears on page 62 and 63. Is there a motion for approval?
Noel will move as revised.
St. Peter or St. Steve Grams will second it. St. Peter of St. Grams, how's that? Or how about Steve Grams and St. Peter?
I thought you were going to say St. Steve.
My mother called me that all the
Did
time.
she? All right. Shannon 1, St. Steve 2. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Blue Flat.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Pete, again,
Thank
for
you.
the 2021 seal coating project bid.
Thank you, Mayor Zeman and City Council. As we have done the past few years, again, is we have gone out and taken quotes for, I should say, written proposals for seal coating. Our plan this year would be to do about 100 blocks of seal coating, similar, give or take 10 blocks, as we have done in the past. We've gone out and calculated that we're going to use about 60,000 gallons of CRS2 oil used for laying down rock and adhering to the street surface. We contacted several vendors that are capable of supplying this material. We did receive 5 quotes back, all fairly reasonable and below previous years from that point. We did have Allied Blacktopping out of Maple Grove. I'm sorry, Allied Blacktop Company out of Maple Grove, a company that we have worked with in the past, supplied the lowest responsible quote for $2.35 per gallon. Our anticipated volume again would be about 60,000 gallons, roughly 10 tankers of oil, and we'd anticipate spending a little over $141,000 to complete this as we've done in the past. And there's a resolution on page 66. And I'm available for questions that you may have.
Questions for Pete on the seal coating? Emily?
Yeah, I have no problem with this, Pete. It sounds like it's a pretty normal thing that we do year to year. I'm just asking a more general question. Is there a more, I guess, environmentally friendly way of doing things like this? I don't know. As far as roads and streets, I know using oil is common, but I know that's not a very environmentally friendly thing. Do you have any knowledge in that area, or are there alternatives? I don't even know.
You know, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. This is something that we have done to try to get wear and length out of our investment. That's something that we could look into. As far as environmental, you mean something that doesn't have fossil fuels, or what are your thoughts, Emily, that I can follow up on?
Yeah, the use of fossil fuel is concerning, but in general, just chemical usage, and are there alternatives that wouldn't be as impactful on the environment? I think that's my main question.
Yeah, the familiarity that we have using materials like this for durability are basically oil and oil-based materials.
Well, thank you. And if you have any other information that you come up with, I'd be interested in that.
Absolutely.
Todd?
Mr. Mayor, I just to add to that, Pete and his crew work very closely with the folks that provide the tankers and the CRS2 material, and so they're very careful around catch basins, etc. And so that's one of the reasons that we feel more comfortable. Those areas are closed off appropriately while that's going on, and as you know, the cleanup happens very quickly after the rock is added. So.
Okay. Anyone else? The resolution awarding the bid for the 2021 street seal coat project appears on page 66. Is there a motion for approval?
Carrie Johnson will make a motion to approve.
It'll second.
Carry 1, Ed 2. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Grahams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Root Flat.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the 2021 asphalt purchase bid award. Pete.
Yes, Mayor Zeman and City Council, we're asking tonight that you approve OMG Midwest, doing business as Minnesota Paving and Materials of Mankato, to be authorized to supply the 3 different types of asphalt that we use here. We did get competitive pricing from both Minnesota Paving and WW Blacktopping, both located, one's on Highway 22, which is Minnesota Paving, and WW Blacktopping in Mankato. We look at 3 different projects. We have a 1/2-inch wear. We anticipate using about 1,300 tons of 1/2-inch wear, mostly for pan patching and other material or other corrections. 3/4-inch wear, which we use on full depth street patching, and 3/4-inch binder base, which is the lower first level base. That's a little solider, more heavy product. In our arsenal for repairing streets. We do full depth patching, complete rebuilds, and pan patching using all these materials. And we do have a variety of different installations and situations where we have to have all of these products available. We're asking that the quote would be for about $172,400 is what our anticipated dollar value to be spent would be. And there is a resolution on page 69 that I would ask you to approve. I'm available for questions.
Questions for Pete? Todd, do you have something?
One other point, Mayor and members, as crews are in the process of doing full depth patching and some other work, it does happen rarely that, as an example, Minnesota Paving and Materials might get shut down for a day, or they might have an equipment failure. And so there are times when we do purchase from, in this example, WW Blacktopping, a very small amount to complete a project or finish out work. So we want you to be aware of that. But certainly the budget is what the budget is. But at times, Pete and his crew need to keep this work going so that a street isn't just partially open for an extended period of time. So I want you to be aware that that's part of our work plan as well.
Okay. Any questions? Other comments? Not. The resolution awarding the 2021 asphalt materials project bid appears on page 69. Is there a motion for approval?
Emily so moves.
Steve Grahams, Mr. Mayor, I'll second that.
Okay, Emily 1, Steve 2. Any other comments, questions at this point? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the electric master plan update. Pete.
Yes, Mayor Zeman and City Council. Again with me tonight is Chad Rasmussen from DGR Engineering. Chad is the lead engineer on not only St. Peter's system, but quite a few systems in southern Minnesota. And I've asked Chad to follow up on his presentation from last week at the workshop. Our goal again tonight would be to have you approve the master plan as Chad has developed that. Which gives us a guide on how we will proceed to make improvements to both our transmission, our substations, and our distribution system. I'll turn it over to Chad for a presentation.
Okay, thanks, Pete. Can everybody see my screen okay? Okay, very good. Good evening again. Thanks, Pete. I'm Chad Rasmussen with DGR Engineering. Here this evening again to give a quick recap of the master plan update for the city's electric system. I'm not intending to go through things in quite as much detail as we did at the council workshop last night, but again, if you have any questions or want me to cover something in more detail, feel free to just stop me or raise your hand and let me know, or we can cover it at the end as well. Again, just a little historical perspective. The last time that an overall system planning study was done was in 2007. Since that time, significant changes have been made on the system, consisting primarily of items that were contained in the last master plan. Load growth didn't quite occur as fast as projected during that time, so it was a little slower. That's why it's been a little longer than the 10 years since this master plan was undertaken. However, there has been continued load growth and development on the system, and it was time to relook at things. Just a quick overview again of the existing electric system there in the city of St. Peter. On the transmission system, you're served by two sources connected to the external transmission grid at 69,000 volts or 69 kV. Those sources are connected in what's called a closed loop fashion, meaning that if you have a problem on one segment of the transmission line, it automatically isolates that section of line and you continue to be fed from another source. So it's a very reliable transmission system. The substations are where power gets transformed from 69,000 volts or transmission voltage down to 13,800 volts or 13.8 kV. And you have three load-serving substations. The Front Street substation is the oldest one, located in downtown area. The transformer there is over 50 years old, as well as a bunch of outdoor recloser equipment is old there as well, and is going to need to be replaced during the study time frame. The Broadway substation is located next to the generation plant just north of Gustavus. And the Sunrise substation is the newest one in the system, constructed about 8 years ago on the north end of the system. The distribution system is how power is fed throughout the community. It's fed at 13.8 kV, as I mentioned, through the use of 14 different underground circuits on the system. While that system is, relatively new, I'll call it, having been built after the 1998 tornado, it is getting to the point with additional loads that have been placed on the system that there are certain situations where loss of major equipment or under heavy loading periods that we're starting to see some voltage deficiencies on the system. And as load growth continues on the system, that shows a need for some more circuits on the system. Additionally, you do have a generation facility on your system up at the Broadway generation plant. The size of that plant is 12 megawatts. For some perspective, the total load on your system during summer peak is about 24 megawatts. So you have enough power at full peak to carry about half of your system. That generation plant is dispatched to the market through SIMPA, your power agency. And that gen plant does provide you with an excellent resource of backup power in the event of a major problem on the transmission system. That power could be dispatched to your residents through switching on the distribution system. But as I mentioned, there are times of the year where you could not carry the whole system, and you'd have to either shut certain things off or rotate the power in those situations. Okay, so the system, while it hasn't been growing as fast as projected last time around, and that's largely due to the success of load management and efficiency programs that SIMPA and the city have undertaken. It is still growing. You're getting, still getting additional customers on the system, like expansions happen and so forth. The red line in this graph shows the summertime loads, and the blue line in this graph shows the wintertime loads. As you can see, it's much more load in the summertime, primarily due to air conditioning type loads on the system. We are projecting that over the course of the next 10 years, you'll see an additional 5 to 6 megawatts on the system from where they stand today. So as I kind of described through the council workshop last time, we did some detailed analysis of the system, which consisted of a load flow model development. And using that system, we're able to go through and do voltage and capacity analysis, in which we look at different outage scenarios, losing each substation transformer or bus or mainline feeder, switch the system around and see how it performs, see where we have problems with voltage or capacity and so forth. In addition to that tool, we look at what the age and condition of equipment on the system is, and we gather input from operating personnel. And that helps us to strategize where it would make the most sense to invest money in the system to keep ahead of load growth and to prevent you from running into issues. So the results of that analysis, we identified phase 1 improvements, which are slated for the years 2023 to 2026, which consist of replacing that old transformer at the Front Street substation and installing some new switchgear there. Again, that replaces that 50-plus-year-old equipment and eliminates outdoor exposure that presently exists with the outdoor reclose arrangement there. Additionally, we're calling for some mainline circuit ties and reconfiguring of the circuits out of that Front Street substation to provide better load balance and more capability for backfeeding during outages. And then finally, at the generation plant, we're calling for some control system equipment upgrades. As that equipment has become obsolete, it is going to be approaching 25 to 30 years old by the time it is replaced, and it's essentially we're trying to get ahead of that, so we get it operational before we start running into problems. On the phase 2, that is slated for the second half of the 10-year time frame, 2027 to 2030. And this one consists primarily of adding a second transformer at the Broadway substation to accommodate load growth on the system that's projected. In addition to that substation transformer, we're going to add 4 new distribution circuits to tie into that substation. And that's going to allow us to switch how the circuits are fed through the system, provide some more balance and capacity for backfeeding throughout the system. So to summarize, phases 1 and 2 each cost about $2.4 million each and provide a total cost of about $4.8 million over the life of the capital improvements plan. I went through that really quick, and hopefully it made sense, but if not, I'd be happy to answer any questions or go through anything in more detail.
Okay. Questions for Chad or for Pete? Like he said, we last Monday, we went over this in our workshop, but doesn't mean other questions don't arise. I don't see anyone. If not, the resolution accepting the electric master plan update appears on page 72. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed'll make a motion to approve.
Noel will second.
Ed 1, Shannon 2. Any questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Next
You
up,
bet.
we have the business license application. Todd?
Mayor and members, this license starts on page 73. It's a tree worker application. As the mayor indicated earlier, renewals are done on consent agenda, and new applicants are handled as a separate agenda item. Again, this is on page 73, and it's for Della Torre Avalos, doing business as Snow and Land LLC. In doing the background research as we do with all the applicants, we didn't find anything that would prohibit this applicant from holding this type of license. The resolution's on page 74.
Okay, questions? Okay, if not, the resolution approving the tree worker license application appears on page 74. Is there a motion for approval?
Carrie Johnson will make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Emily will second.
Carrie 1, Emily 2. Any questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the request for city assistance for marketfest. Todd?
Mayor and members, the information is contained on page 75. This is an application that you saw last year. However, it's been modified in a couple substantial ways. First of all, it grows its location slightly, and this application request includes the closure of 1/2 of a block of Park Row east of Highway 169 on the Saturdays of the events. The second growth in this is that last year it was a few scattered Saturdays here and there. This really provides for Saturdays from the end of April, 1st of May through October, so it significantly increases the number of Saturdays that you would provide assistance. The level of assistance that you provide is really threefold, one of which is utilization of your sidewalks, and the applicants have provided the required insurance for this. Second is some barricades and other things that would be utilized as that partial closure of Park Row occurs, again, east of Highway 169 on Park Row. And the third primary of which would be to provide for electrical utilization in your festoon circuit lights. So if you're downtown and you see kind of those black boxes next to the trees, those would be turned on for vendors to be able to plug in things like cash registers or cell phones or whatever it is. This is a substantial growth, again, in the potential plan for this, and the Chamber of Commerce is providing support to this activity as well. Again, they have the available information to their potential users, and they've communicated with folks in the downtown. They've solicited and received the support of the Chamber of Commerce, and we would also require, as you see within the body of the resolution, that they provide the appropriate width for traffic to traverse, pedestrian traffic, on the sidewalk. They can't just suck up the whole sidewalk. They got to make it passable for folks. Typically what we've seen and what we've encouraged of this group is that their stands be set up on the parking lane side or the curb side, and the space from that setup to the building is open for that pedestrian traffic, so that the pedestrian traffic is not closer to the parking lane, but the vendors are. That way you don't have somebody teetering as they're walking, etc., and accidentally bump up into cars or the parking lane there. Mayor and members, if there's any questions that you have, I'm happy to help respond as best as I can. The information is included in your packet, and actually they've done a good job of filling out and meeting all the requirements, and the resolution is on page 83.
Questions? Carrie?
I guess I don't have a question. I just, it just seems very ambitious, which is good that they want to take this on. And from what I've heard from the business community, they're very supportive, and it does increase sales from their perspective. I don't know if there's been any downside or complaint with the last time, but it is going to be every weekend for a long time. I really appreciate their thoughtfulness about accessibility. especially if the city is providing support and use of sidewalks. So wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Okay. Ed?
Is this financial impact at 750, is that for the whole summer or a week?
Yeah, no, that would be for the whole summer, Mayor and members. That's my best estimate. We would not necessarily, and as you see within the body of the resolution, it's not our practice. We won't have your crews out on a Saturday putting up the barricades and taking down the barricades. The organizers will have to do that, and we'll instruct them how to do it. So it's really having barricades out there and the electricity utilization that they'd have. And frankly, receipt of calls, concerns, making sure the width is where we have calls and concerns, and working with the organizers to ensure that they're in compliance.
I was just curious if we were gonna have guys do the barricades or if they were gonna be.
No, typically in these instances, we instruct the organizers on how to do it, and then there's a follow-up. Frankly, we kind of take turns a little bit, stopping by to make sure that it gets done appropriately.
Okay.
And usually the organizers, and certainly as they did this last year in a little bit different way and not utilizing that exact space, worked really well and followed instruction well on those types of things.
That's all, only question I had.
Okay. Anyone else? Question? Okay. Not the resolution approving the city assistance for MarketFest St. Peter appears on page 83. Is there a motion for approval?
Noel so moves.
That'll second.
Shannon 1, Ed 2. Any more questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. That concludes this phase of our new business. Next up, we have reports. I have two things. One, I didn't do it when we were back here discussing it, but I want to acknowledge Mr. Jeff Domrus for the job he does on creating our estimates. I haven't seen, you're usually right in there, Jeff, and I don't think you get enough credit for sometimes what, it's not an easy job. I know we pay you for doing it. It's not like you're guessing, hopefully. I just wanted to make sure that people know the great job you're doing, Jeff, on that. The other thing I have is tomorrow night, and I didn't confirm the time, and I got so many things on it already. 6 o'clock, the local board of appeal and equalizations at 6 o'clock tomorrow night, and that one is all virtual. So we need a quorum, so hopefully everybody can make that, or most of you can make that. That's all I've got. Todd.
Mayor and members, we provide opportunity typically after this meeting for a short discussion or a report for the city-county meeting. We had a city-county meeting just last Wednesday on the 21st. Councilmember Carrie Johnson and I were participating. 2 county commissioners that are assigned to it. The interim county administrator was also present. I thought we had a very positive discussion. Carrie, I'll kind of stay out of the way if you want to provide some information and maybe fill in if you want to jump in with anything that you thought was really important or interesting to you.
Only that they just, we went through our typical agenda, which includes a lot of things, and they were just kind of honest about how much they could tackle at this time because their energy and focus has been kind of put into recruitment of a new county administrator, but seemed really willing to listen regardless, but just it did feel positive.
Yeah, Carrie, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but from my perspective, it felt that they were more listening to us about some of the priorities that the city council has established in the past, and some of those relate to potential partnerships and opportunities relative to stormwater and how we do work and look towards additional improvement on the western edge of town and water that comes off the bluff from about 6,000 acres. We think that that's very important. Some of the issues related to solid waste removal and sharing the video that takes place, or the video imagery that takes place at the compost site at St. Julian and Swift Street. And so they are committed to continue to work on that. And so those are some of the, at least from my perspective, the bigger takeaways from a more positive meeting than we've had in the past.
Oh, great. So 2 good things tonight. this and then also the ADA thing that we had before, you know, it's miracle night for us.
Mr. Mayor, the second one that I
Yes.
have, if you don't mind, I just wanted to provide a brief update on the police recruiting process, just to remind members and certainly folks that might be watching or folks in our community that the application window closes on the 30th at 5 o'clock on the 30th, and so we're still accepting applications for the police chief, also for building official, but I wanted to specifically talk about the police chief. Wanted to make sure that folks were aware that on the 26th of May, 26th and 27th are dates that are scheduled, we believe, for interviews for the police chief. And as the council reviewed the plan, we continue to hone in on dates and times, etc. So from a public perspective, for those folks from the public who might be interested in what we usually call a meet and greet of candidates, that will occur in the morning on the 26th, generally from around 8:30 or 9 o'clock until about 10 or 10:30. The exact times are not determined yet because the number of finalists may impact the amount of time that's necessary. And so, again, specifically for just community members that might be interested and want to meet them or see them, right now we're tentatively planning both an in-person and a virtual opportunity. So you'll be able to be at home and get to know them a little bit. And that will include a presentation by all of the candidates from about 3 to 7 minutes to talk about themselves and some of the things that they've done. It will also include a question and answer period where we'll have 3 or 4 designated questions that we'll ask all the candidates. And so people will be able to hear that, again, whether in person or virtually. And certainly there'll be a feedback loop. So there'll be an opportunity for people to provide comments about candidates as we move forward. So I wanted to really emphasize that there's just a y'all come opportunity to visit with potential police chief candidates, along with the 3 or 4 other interview opportunities that are going on with council, commission, myself, and others. So, Mr. Mayor, if there's other questions about that, I'm happy to answer that, but that's really what I wanted to focus on this evening.
All right. All right, before we ask for the closed session, is there anyone that has anything else to add or questions to Todd before we do that? All right. If not, that we will now ask for a resolution for calling for a closed session for the purpose of request to purchase. We're talking about a couple of properties, municipal lot number 5. Request to purchase for the former wastewater treatment ponds, and now we are also have a closed session asked for the attorney-client privilege for the ends property easements. That
So, Mayor, members,
resolution appears on with this change on page 84. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed will make a motion to approve.
Noel will second.
All right. Before asked to take the roll, we will be returning to open session, but the only thing we will be taking up, and we may not, based on the closed session, we may not be taking it up tonight, but is to potentially talk about the last item, the ends property easement. So with that, any questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye. Resolution for the closed sessions is approved. We will now recess to those closed sessions, and I would think, Todd, we're going to lead at least 20 minutes.
Kyle, last time I was a terrible guesser, so I'll go with your guess,
Why don't
Mr.
we
Mayor.
go with 20 minutes and 21 minutes? And for those that will not be at the meeting that need to come back, return at 9:05, please. So we will recess at 8:44 p.m. on Monday, April 26, 2020. Okay. All right. Barb, you weren't here, but we are, so you have a time, we are returning to open session at 9:16 PM on Monday, April 26, 2021. And we will take up the issue that talks about, starts on page, oh boy. Oh,
Mr.
here
Mayor,
we go.
the resolution that you'd consider would be...
Well, I'm going to go back to our Jim, if you want to cover anything for the record.
Sure.
Page 52 it starts on, and with the resolution, as Todd said, on page 55. Jim?
Yeah, since we met last week, En's attorney and myself have worked on resolving some differences in the easements, and they're basically clarifications. One example was that he wanted to limit our access only coming off of Clark Street, both the current Clark Street and the future Clark Street. Since they own property to Traverse Road, he didn't want us accessing it off of Traverse Road and driving through their field, which was totally reasonable. If in the future we have to place equipment outside the easement, we would have to have an agreement with them as to how much we would. In speaking with Jeff, we don't anticipate we would ever need to go outside our current easement. What we anticipate is there is a real possibility, and Jeff's here to correct me if I'm wrong, that we may have to go in and clean out that deep sewer. In order to accomplish that, Jeff has designed our system to have a large PVC pipe at the bottom of the trench and clean out pipes coming off that large PVC pipe to about 4 to 6 feet below the surface level. There may be times in the next years that we may have to go in and clean some of that pipe out. Hopefully that would not be done during a crop season. If it was, part of the easement agreement is that we would assign 3 assessors. We'd pick one, they'd pick one, and the 2 would pick a third one. And then they would assess crop damage. Hopefully that would be able to be resolved prior to that, and we wouldn't need the assessors. So those are the issues. When Mr. Keel gave it to Enns to sign Thursday, they came back today, just today, and said, well, how about you pay for half the cost of manholes? And the manholes would not be an issue, but for we don't know where they're going to be. So we can put a manhole in and then have to dig it out because the developer was going to develop a different spot. So Todd and I talked about it. We said, well, how about if we agree to, we would only need 1 manhole across this pipe, across this space. So what if we'd agree to pay half the cost of 1? They agreed to that and have committed to sign. So the proposal would be to continue with this. As soon as my office has confirmation that the easements are signed, I have a check in my possession right now. We would deliver it to them, pick up the easements, and have them recorded and be done. Move forward.
Okay.
Questions?
Yep, questions? Now that we're back in open session. Anyone? Comments? All right. If not, the resolution authorizing acceptance of the wastewater utility easement between Enns, City of St. Peter, and Larry and Levon Enns, with the clarifications that Jim just mentioned, appears on page 55. Is there a motion for approval?
So move, Mr. Mayor. Steve Graham.
Ed 1, Steve 2. Any questions or comments now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Resolution passes with those clarifications indicated. That concludes our new business. With that, we will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Ed will make motion to adjourn.
Emily will second.
Ed 1, Emily 2, all in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? We are